I think it's more likely that Andy Luter is going to join us tomorrow. His A job, I think, is going to extend far enough tonight that we will not be able to get his reaction to the, there's a couple stories worth discussing with him, including Amy Bach, the sentence is in. Did I see, was it 41 years?
41, yeah, that's the number.
41 years and a whole bunch of money. I don't know what the odds are of getting that money back, how that works. But I know Andy will be able to explain all of that. And we'll have some time to get into a little more detail on that story a bit later as well. Let's get to some texts here. This might be my favorite thus far, Gaardsy. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, here. I find it interesting that you talk about the Wild more now than during the season and the playoffs. I'm referring to the entire station. 651 guy, again, I don't know, what you're listening to. Since the postseason has begun, we've had a steady and endless diet of Minnesota Wild conversation. During the season, it's up, it's down. It's the way it goes with pretty much all of the sports. I can't speak for other shows. I think there's plenty of hockey talked about elsewhere, for sure. Certainly during the postseason. So I don't know what he's listening to. Maybe he's got his frequencies confused. I'm not sure. What was the over-under? Tony writes on having to use the dump button for Guerin. I'm listening online and only heard one.
Yeah.
Great interview. He's always good. 701 guy also enjoyed the interview. Has me really looking forward to when you talk with Conley. I think he's talking about Tim there. There's some efforts being made in that regard. We'll see how that goes. Bookseller guy writes, these talks with Guerin
took me a minute.
Are marvelous. It's great verbal fencing, but he still allows your questions to still give us a lot of insight, hearkening back to the old Mike Tice interactions. Those are the days. Brother David, I give you credit, Dan. You're doing your best. I have no idea how you know when he's done talking or he wants to keep going. Doesn't sound easy. That's the challenge with Guerin.
It's a Chris Carter-like thing.
It's Chris Carter to the 10th power. I think he's trumped. He's now surpassed. He being Guerin has surpassed Carter with the pregnant pauses and knowing when to jump back in when the silence becomes so hard to miss that silence in the radio has its limits.
Yes.
But I love every minute of it. I like, if you want to call it jousting, it's weird because there's people where I've had on over the years where I could see where you'd come away saying, God, that just seems nerve-wracking, and I don't know if I enjoy this. That's what we do. And I think he does end up answering. He's not going to always answer the questions to my satisfaction or anybody's, but he allows the questions, first of all, to be asked, doesn't lose his mind. I didn't even really mean the goaltender question, but I knew I had to ask it. I had pledged that with Russo yesterday because I don't think it was asked that directly in the presser right after. So, yeah, I'm doing that to see what the reaction, but he answered it. Yeah, and you may not like the answer, but he went after it. So, again, whatever the formula is with him, it's different probably than with anybody else that we've had on. Tice was similar in that sense, in that Tice would allow arguing. He would allow jousting, and he might get mad, or he might say, well, that's stupid, or whatever, but then you move on to the next thing, and I'm no worse for the wear. Somebody likened it today to when kind of a Charles Grodin with first Carson and then Letterman vibe, which, of course, was Grodin. I mean, in that scenario, obviously, Grodin's the guest, and he sounds annoyed the whole time he's doing the interview.
Yes.
Even though that's the bit, right? In Grodin's case.
A lot of it was.
And it was brilliant. I sometimes find myself going down the YouTube rabbit hole watching old examples of that byplay because it's so good. Grodin is just so outstanding. And those guys knew how to play with it too. So, yeah, I could see there might be a little bit of that. What number is Connor McDavid going to wear? I didn't ask him that question. That did come up a lot.
Yeah.
Who's going to wear 97?
That's a big one.
That's a very big one.
Is that
right?
why the Kirill meeting was an hour? And not 30 minutes before he went back to Russia?
Yeah. Ask Bill if he is sick of the Monday morning quarterbacks. Who makes more money, Kaprizov or Guerin? I think it's Kaprizov.
Yeah, I think it is.
Although I think Guerin's doing fine.
He's
right,
okay
at this point. Yeah,
He's
very,
it
very
seems
true.
like it.
So yeah, it was. I enjoyed it, and I think really, like I said, the crux of it is, and it sounds like he acknowledged that. Yeah, I do have to find out why the players didn't follow the plan. Right? I mean, at some point he said, yeah, he was unhappy with the notion that, well, you think we didn't drum it into their heads? I'm going to put that on. I'm going to call the head coach into the principal's office. But then you sort of do have to find out, because I just don't think it's like we've got a bunch of 18-year-old, 22-year-old players who at this late date need to be finally learn, oh, you mean to win a cup, you have to keep doing it over and over again. I mean, come on. These guys have been around long enough to me where there shouldn't have to be this. Well, you have to go through all those processes. So, in any case, it was. I would have preferred it in studio, but we did what we could.
The Fan and BigDeck.com want to do what they can for you to win bonus bucks with our National Cash Contest. Cash is the 4 o'clock keyword. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword cash.
They tell me this is a big emotional night in late night. We'll discuss that. And even a local column in the Star Tribune attempting to sort of evaluate the career of said late night host who is wrapping things up. And then we will prepare for Gerald Posner about 4:30.
You're listening to Barrero on...
Save the late night TV talk for the 5 o'clock hour, because we're getting a little squeezed, and we have a guest at the bottom of this hour. Let's give you the short version on the Amy Bach sentencing. 41 and a half years in prison for her role in the Feeding Our Future fraud scheme. She's also ordered to pay $243 million in restitution back to the federal government. What are the odds that they get that money? I don't know how that. I mean, a lot of we haven't gotten much of our money back, right? We've gotten a little bit.
Gotten
of it.
some, yeah. Clawbacks and Ponzi schemes and stuff like this. Yeah. They're very difficult.
Interesting quote from your guy, former acting U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson. Apparently, Bach got emotional in the courtroom. Did you see the Thompson quote?
I didn't. I saw that she got emotional, but I didn't see what he said.
Take anything Amy Bach says at face value. Obviously, I'm sure she's emotional and sad. It's hard to watch someone be sentenced. That's true in any case, regardless of how bad the crime is. She, before the judge, I think this was before the sentencing was announced, she said, I understand I failed. I failed the public, my family, and everyone.
Yeah.
And one of the questions for me, this is, we mentioned the judge says she's culpable for the full $243 million in fraud in this case. In a case like this, I don't know how it works in terms of how much time she will actually serve. Is what the guidelines are in terms of parole, getting out early, all those sorts of good things. But I think, wasn't the government asking for 50?
50 was the number I saw earlier.
The prosecutors,
in the week. Yep.
And then one of the predictions I heard yesterday might be 31, and it ends up being 41. How you come to whatever it is, I have no, you know what I mean. I don't know.
Judges have their formulas.
They do, and it feels arbitrary, but there might, there could well be. I'm sure there's some method to it. Did you see also? see if I can find the story here. Well, I don't think I think I might have left it at my desk. The Star Tribune, they keep kind of digging deeper into some of the files they got via Freedom of Information. And the other shoe that dropped this morning, I think, at least that's when I read it, was the notion that several politicians, several elected officials, had in their own way attempted to exert varying amounts of pressure on the various departments to hey, we're ponying up the money. What are you doing? And it's one of the things I want to talk about with Lugar, because there's a part of me that says the devil's in the details to me, because I don't think the act, look, in retrospect now, any pressure put on any level seems preposterous, dangerous, irresponsible, and part of the problem, correct? However, on the other, and I'd also say that on the other hand, in the case of the legislators, to me, it depends what kind of pressure they attempted to exert, how aggressive they were, because part of the job you do for your constituents is you sometimes make phone calls, you do ask questions, you do serve that purpose. I don't think the act of that necessarily has to be over the line. For me, it depends on what you said, how you said it, and again, how tenacious you were. How often you kept coming back. Were there either stated or sort of indirect threats that were being offered up there, correct? But it is an interesting tentacle to the story, because the emphasis so far on a lot of this reporting has had more to do with the regulators themselves, whether, despite several whistleblowers saying then and continuing to say now, we told our bosses something didn't smell right here. It was not, you did not have to be Sherlock Holmes to detect that a lot of this stuff didn't add up. And then it was what people in positions of authority did despite, or didn't do, despite those warnings. And in fact, often it demanded that those folks who were asking questions basically to shut them up, to say, back off. We're not going to get into this. We're not going to have the public relations smear of being viewed as a racist institution. We talked about that a lot again 2 days ago and a little bit yesterday. So the story today, though, had more to do with politicians, right? More with elected leaders.
Here's one paragraph to kind of illustrate. In April 2021, State Senator Omar Fatah, DFL Minneapolis, met with top education department officials to explain why resolving the, quote, reimbursement issue, end quote, was critical to maintaining community trust in these important programs. According to an April 26, 2021 email from the senator, a day later, the Education Department's government relations director responded by announcing the department was lifting the payment block, quote, due to the concerns expressed by community organizations, end quote, represented by the senator. So
one of the questions I would have for that rep would be, well, did you ask questions about why the faucet, they were talking about turning off the faucet? Are there some red flags here? Are there some things to be concerned about? To me, that's part of the story, and maybe that's covered deep in the weeds of that story. Maybe that information is not available, but that's a precise example to me of what we're talking about here. If there's an implied threat of, hey, we got to get this stuff back going. What are you doing? Now, I don't want to go down some of these roads I might have to go down, but let's turn the faucet back on. That's a problem. If there's not any willingness or understanding or even questions being asked about why they were considering turning the faucet off or backing off a little bit or slowing the whole thing down. Now, no one's going to admit to that now. And the quote from him later in the piece was he's horrified.
Yep.
Horrified to find out that all this cheating was going on. But what was his tenor? What was his approach then? Was it open-minded to the possibility that, well, that's their job. These folks have a job to do, and they're seeing some stuff. All right, let's see. Well, can you give me a little more information or how? Again, you can represent constituents. That act should not be beyond the pale, but it's the approach you took, how far you went, because it certainly, sure as hell looks like on the basis of that timing laid out in the story, next day, right? Next day, we're back on. And did that serve the public any good? That haste? So that, it goes deeper and deeper almost every time another story is written. And I know some people are tired of it. I don't think you can ever be tired of it. And I honestly don't even think we yet have the full story. I don't know if we ever will, but we're getting closer, but I'm not sure. I'm still not sure that we do. Bottom of the hour break. Our old friend Gerald Posner, longtime best-selling writer, author. We're going to catch up with him on a number of subjects, including a piece he co-wrote with his wife and in Skeptic magazine. And then he had an interesting, I think, piece that might well dovetail with what that particular story covers regarding a horrific event that took place at a mosque in San Diego. So we're going to get to all of that and who knows what else. If you have questions for Gerald, the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is always open, 64686.
You're listening to Barrero.
Well, he's pretty much everywhere these days. Best-selling journalist, reporter, and writer. He's written now well into double digits, outstanding investigative journalistic-related books on subjects we've explored with him over the years. That includes, of course, pharma. And, well, if you go back far enough, case closed on the JFK case, a case that never is going to go away, as he knows. So he still ends up occasionally having to defend his point of view based on his reporting in it. He's got a Substack these days. In fact, today, that's where I want to start with Gerald Posner, kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. If you'll pot him up for me, Gaardsy, we'll get the conversation started. We'll take some questions from the audience as well. Gerald, thanks again for the time. I'm looking at headline on your Substack piece, "The Internet Built These Killers. Two San Diego teenage shooters did not invent a worldview. They downloaded one." And, of course, this is the case in which I believe the largest mosque in San Diego was attacked by two individuals. Ultimately, I think 3 were killed, and then the 2 shooters also then killed themselves. And the story is horrific enough and tragic enough. But what you attempt to do is, based on what we already seem to know about the 2 teenage shooters, connect a lot of dots here, how this might be one of the perfect cases in which these kids lived in places on the internet and to that extent seemingly groomed them to take on a worldview that you say believes in discriminating against a lot of people and thinking violently about a lot of people as well. Where do you want to begin?
I mean, Dan, the amazing thing is when I went through their 75-page, for lack of a better word, call it a manifesto or that, their writings that they intend to be found, by the way. So, we say sometimes something's not a suicide mission. This is. I mean, they're expecting to go out, do this attack, go down in some form of history for the people that they admire, who are other mass murderers in all types of different events, and then leave behind these writings about what they believe in. And it's a remarkable sort of insight into these pipelines of hatred on the internet, which are feeding, not just kids, but adults as well. And they were tuned in not just to one of those pipelines, but to multiple ends of the pipeline. So that it really is like they brought in all these different separate views from what I call the underground sewer, and they combined into one overarching view that if you're a parent, you read it and you think to yourself, I hope my teenage son or daughter is not in their room, going down one of these rabbit holes, because it ends up like these kids did, believing that they called themselves like, the younger one being 17 versus the 18-year-old, called themselves a Christian eco-fascist accelerationist. Now, I guarantee you ask most of the people in your audience what that means, and they'll say, I have no idea, because none of us have any idea what it means. It's something that you pick up and you sort of create for yourself the people they admire, or the gunmen who killed, slaughtered dozens of Muslims in a New Zealand mosque back, 6 years ago. They admire these books, the Turner Diaries, about a dystopian novel, sort of a violent race war and overthrow of the government. They don't like blacks. They don't like gays. They don't like Trump. They don't like Jews. They rail about them controlling everything. And then they're attacking a mosque. It's the type of material that it's depressing in the end when you read it, because you think to yourself, these can't be the last two teenagers in America or around the globe who are falling down this rabbit hole.
And you lay out, I think, very honestly, some other examples of this sort of radicalization and how clearly dangerous it can indeed be. But one of your key sentences here, and it won't play well because it's in that gray area. You write, there is no clean policy answer that fits in a column, and I am suspicious of anyone who pretends otherwise. But we can be honest about what we are watching. The platforms that monetize this material know exactly what they're doing. Influencers who launder anti-Semitism and misogyny as edgy comedy know exactly what they are doing. The politicians who wink at the great replacement narrative, which sits in the middle of this manifesto like a load-bearing wall, know exactly what they're doing. The kids don't always know, and that is the point of the funnel. We're back to, I think we've identified the problem, but again, in a so-called, free society that is pretty, I think, tenacious about holding on to our freedoms, we're back to, what do we do? What do we do about it?
Yeah, and that is the quandary. There is no easy fix. And listen, these kids were like they were on the incel forums, which are the kids who, don't have sex. They were on these gore sites. They were on the Telegram channels. They were on Discord, which I've investigated Discord before. I mean, Discord is an open platform that a lot of people use for all types of different purposes, and there are people using Discord for good purposes, but there are also people using it for all types of nefarious purposes. So it's really hard to shut it off. If they had one overarching thing, you talk about the great replacement narrative. They thought of themselves, although one of them has a Latin surname, they think of themselves as white, and they really are putting this out as sort of a manifesto for white people to stand up as Christian ethnic nationalists and take back their country, whatever that means. And the part of it that is really amazing to me is that, what are you going to do about it? I mean, that's the challenge that this manifesto has in some ways, because we aren't going to go out and suddenly start to close sites down. We shouldn't. I get it. And if you ask people who are adding to this type of, stew of hatred to quiet it down, tampen it down, and whatever else, I don't think you're going to get that, because there are too many people that are making money off of it. They believe in it. They're real. We've got a candidate running for Congress in Florida who says, he would strap on a gun and sign up if he could go off and kill Israelis. And he's allowed to say it because he's, it's free speech. I get it. I may think he's delusional and unhinged in his anti-Israel fervor and his desire to go to war with Israel, but he's running for Congress. He's not going to get many votes, I hope, and I don't think he's going to win, but, that's the country we're in. And on the Internet, if you think we have freedom of speech here on the Internet, it's the Wild West, and it still is. So, if you ask Musk to make Twitter a little calmer, or if you ask, the people who are behind Discord to tampen it down, even if they did that, whatever that would mean, in the algorithm being a little better, there are going to be 20 other places in Telegram and everywhere else where people can go ahead and get this pipeline. And so, I can't just tell parents to watch what your kids are doing, because that's not going to be the right thing. We know that happens all the time. And sometimes it's going to be adults who fall into it. Yeah. In some ways, I mean, I'm not often dejected by something that I investigate, because I always figure there's some good fight to fight about it. There is here as well, but I will say that reading through this manifesto is rather disheartening, because you realize that how tough it is to come up with a reasonable answer as to what might be done not to repeat this time and time again.
You also write, this is what online radicalization looks like in 2026. Not a robed cell in a basement, not a charismatic leader on a stage, a teenager, a feed, an algorithm, a Discord, and a chorus of dead men he has been taught to call heroes. That's part of what makes this so daunting, correct?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, they call their manifesto, by the way, the New Crusade, Sons of Tarrant. And, for people that don't know Tarrant, it's Brenton Tarrant, who they came to idolize online. He was the white supremacist who killed 51 Muslims in the East New Zealand mosque 6 or 7 years ago. They were not only with Tarrant as one of their people that they would admire, but they talk about this, now it's gone, but this Adam Waffen division was sort of a neo-Nazi organization. Terrorgram, the same thing, sort of a white supremacist neo-Nazi, the base. And I think that it even opened with a Sonnenrad, which is this ancient symbol that was taken by the Nazi SS and used as this mystic symbol. They picked it all up. They were like a magnet, and they were attracting all these different elements, not in a cohesive way where you say, oh, that's their philosophy. They pulled it all together. They call themselves accelerants, meaning that they're taking these ideas and putting them together into a single grievance. And then they decide, I'll tell you read through it, and Dan, they could be attacking a synagogue. They could be attacking a U.S. government building like McVeigh did when he went after the Murrah building in 95. They could be going after a mosque, which they did. Any number of targets could have been on their list. They picked the mosque as their target and decided that's how they were going out on this flame of glory. And you realize that the other part of it that's so frustrating and so sort of, puts you on edge is that it's a dice roll. When you're reading through a manifesto like that, if these kids are actually going to act out, they are just looking for a target that they think might be the one that's going to get them the most fame and the easiest to hit at. And somebody else did not get hit just by the luck of their own crazy decision making. But that's how random it could be. There
are broader implications on all this, and that was the other reason. Largely, we wanted to have you on today, and that's to talk about the piece that you and your wife Tricia have published in Skeptic magazine. The headline is "The New Normal for Anti-Semitism." So can dots be connected here? Is that what you write about? Basically that, oddly enough, the left and the right, portions of each, have come together to sort of, cook up this new normal for anti-Semitism. Are there any connections with this particular story? Where do they connect? Where is it very different?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of what I call the horseshoe thing. So, we, in addition to being writers and journalists and doing investigative work and everything else, we figured we didn't have enough work to do. So, like 4 years ago, we started a small little thing called Anti-Semitism Watch. And basically, Tricia's keeping an eye on anti-Semitism growing, because at the time, she was convinced that the big organizations like the Anti-Defamation League and that were only calling out anti-Semitism when it happened on the right, and they were giving a pass to the left. So groups like Black Lives Matter and others that often had fair amounts of anti-Semitism within inside of their own movement were getting a free pass on that. So she wanted to really call out both the left and the right. Well, at the time, it seemed as though the left was a growing part of the problem. Now the right is as well. So the left has this view that's anti-Semitism based on the idea primarily that Israel's an illegitimate state. It's an apartheid country. It's a racist country. It's involved in genocide. And they conflate Israelis, Zionists, and Jews all as one. So, if Russia's invading Ukraine, people don't go around looking for American Russian citizens in Brooklyn to beat up. But here they're looking for Jews. So that's the view on the left. On the right, it's sort of a revival of the old vintage views of anti-Semitism, the ancient views that Jews are omnipotent. They control the world. They control the media. They're an evil cabal. They're sort of a handful. They lead America into wars and all of this. So that's the growth of it on the right. And these kids, the first 8 pages of the 18-year-old Caleb Liam Vasquez's manifesto is just given over to sort of a classic view of what I would call far-right anti-Semitism, portraying Jews as, he calls them the universal enemy. His younger accomplice, calls them the problem of every problem in the world. One of the people that they worship, besides Tarrant, who was the shooter in New Zealand at the mosque, is the Tree of Life shooter in Pittsburgh in 2018, where nearly a dozen people were killed. And they salute the shooters in Germany and at a synagogue in California and at Bondi Beach in Sydney, where 15 people were killed. So they're meshed into all of that as well. And I do think that when we talk about the new normal for anti-Semitism, it is a problem on the left in terms of that view of Israel and conflating Jews and Israelis as one, and on the right in terms of Jews being the dominant force. And they meet in the middle in sort of this growing surge of anti-Semitism.
The part of what has disturbed me through the last several months on the debate and these distinctions between, Israel and Jews, etc., is there's almost like, well, we have a million litmus tests, as I don't have to tell you anymore, politically speaking. And part of what I reject is this notion that, well, you have to explain yourself. Are you in favor of Israeli policy or against Israeli policy? And if your comeback is, well, that's a complicated question, here's what I approve of, here's what I don't, that's where we are here now, and so if the answer is, well, you do not repudiate enough of what I think you need to repudiate, then I'm not going to make any of the distinctions. You're part of the problem, and I will feel free to do with you whatever I want to do. The litmus test thing drives me nuts, because people can have Zionists and can have the opinion that they believe in some aspects of what that represents. And that's like, I think in some parts of the left, that's considered a place you absolutely can't go. And then at that point, they say, that's all I need to know about you. And it's open season on you.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. As a matter of fact, so the interesting thing is, you can have a debate all day long if you want to about Zionism, and as I view it, the right question of whether Jews have the right to have a state of Israel. I understand that. And what happens though is Zionist has now become on the left a pejorative. So the very use of the word is insulting and indicting. Is shortened for Zio, which actually was started by David Duke, of all people, the neo-Nazi leader, but it's been picked up by the left. So Zio. I mean, you hear the chants in London. Trisha's a native Brit. On Saturdays when they have the large marches, the pro-Palestinian anti-Israel marches, one of the chants that you hear all the time is Zio, put a Zio in the ground. So the idea that if somebody says that they're a Zionist, they're immediately categorized as being a reactionary colonialist, person who is a racist, and it therefore doesn't become a discussion or debate. And I think that that's inflammatory. Whereas on the right, if you have Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens or others saying, by the way, Israel, we're fighting Israel's war with Iran. Where the reason that the U.S. is over there is because of Netanyahu and Israel. And I think to myself all the time, Donald Trump may be a lot of things. People love him, they hate him, they don't like him, whatever else. But nobody thinks of him really as somebody who's just a weak character sitting around waiting for, somebody to come in like the head of the Israeli government, Netanyahu, and say, hey, we're going to war next Tuesday. We're going to go after Iran. And Trump says, oh, well, if you're going to do that, we might as well go with you. We'll put everything in as well, as if Trump's not his own person, but that's how they view it. So it's remarkable to me that on the one hand, you have this politically charged view that everything revolves around Zionism and Israel. And on the other hand, you have this view that really Jews are pulling the strings behind the scenes. And I get it. It's not going to go away very easily. I think that if anything, this type of revival on both ends is here to stay for a while.
I had sent a link to a story, which which you had probably already seen. In fact, I think your wife tweeted about it as well. There's a congressional candidate out of Texas. I think her name is Maureen Galindo. And I have no idea what kind of following she has. This is no clue. I think she's running as a Democrat to represent Texas's 35th congressional district. And she had pledged to transform a site south of San Antonio, now used by the Trump administration to detain migrants, into an internment camp for, quote, American Zionists. And when she's kind of been called on this inexplicable, this ridiculous assertion or pledge, she's basically said, well, I want to make sure I'm making it clear. I'm talking about Zionists. I'm not just talking about all Jews. And again, I'm a big First Amendment absolutist almost. But there's a part of me that says, how do we get to a place where this might be among the possibilities of a position that a person running for Congress feels comfortable standing behind?
Yeah, no. I mean, it's pretty amazing, as a matter of fact. And you're right. I mean, she's a sex therapist, evidently, and in her original statement, she said that she would turn an ICE detention center that was in the district that she's running into a prison for American Zionists. And it would also serve, and I'm quoting her here, I love this, a castration processing center for pedophiles, which will probably be mostly for Zionists. Now, even AOC came out and condemned her. So the progressive left in the Democratic Party realized this is bad. This goes too far. AOC called it absolutely disgusting. And what you had then was this candidate who came out and she put on Instagram, she walked it back. And she walked it back by saying, oh, okay, I don't want Jews in internment camps. I'm just talking about Zionists. It was the worst walk back I've ever seen. So, is she going to win? No, I don't think so. I get it. But one of the problems is the lack of accountability, because I must say that if you came up and said, I'm thinking of an internment camp for American blacks, or I'm thinking of reviving and putting Japanese back into internment camps, or whatever, any number of things, I think people would be marching and saying, you've got to get out of that race for that. And there's some level of acceptance that's come in without accountability here on going after the Jews. And I say that as somebody, by the way, who's not Jewish. I'm Catholic. I was born and raised. I had a Jewish father who didn't practice at all. I had a Catholic mother who was a devout Catholic. I was an altar boy going through school with the Sisters of Charity. I went to the Jesuits for high school. I'm still a cultural Catholic. I wrote a book about the Catholic Church and money. And so people assume that because I'm talking a lot about anti-Semitism, that I must be Jewish. My last name's Posner, and the stuff that I get on Twitter, in terms of notes, you Jew, you kike, you things like this all the time. And once in a while, I would say, oh, by the way, I'm not Jewish, I'm Catholic. And that just brings out another tsunami of hatred of that. So I've realized not to answer that on Twitter. But it is interesting that I've come to this not as somebody who's Jewish. I'm coming to it sort of, I have skin in the game in that my wife is Jewish and she's worked up on it and she has me worked up on it. But I'm trying to look at it from the outside, and it's not an easy problem to come up also with solutions for.
Who are the Mangionistas?
Mangionistas are an easier thing for me to come up with a solution for, because I say that they should be just stripped of their press credentials. They are three young women who, not to look at, there is no doubt that Luigi Mangione, who shot a healthcare executive CEO in the back in a New York street, and I know he's pleaded guilty and he says he's innocent and he hasn't been convicted, and I'm talking to you as though he's a guilty person, because I do believe he is a guilty person from all the evidence I've looked at, including that tape and what was picked up. But Mangione has his fangirls, most of them. A lot of people do over time. And in the last court hearing, there were three young women who reminded me almost of the three Manson girls.
That's exactly where I was going. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. But these three got a press pass. Now, it used to be the police. Up to a couple of years ago, the police in New York City gave press passes out. You had to apply to them. Now you have to go through the mayor's office. So the mayor's office, somehow, somebody in the mayor's office thought these were influencers, gave them a press pass, and I put up a thing that said, the press passes. This is disgraceful. They were saying there that they were happy that he was killed. They don't think Mangioni's innocent. They think he's a hero for having killed a health care executive, which I hear sometimes from some people on the internet, which I'm amazed at and appalled at. But they were saying they were happy. They hope his wife remembers all the time. If he had any kids, they should grow up knowing what a terrible person he was and a criminal, and good for Luigi. And I said the press pass should be released. And that kicked off a debate on Twitter about should influencers have press passes and who gets to say you're a journalist or not a journalist. And I get that. That's a whole different discussion. But the Mangionistas, as I called them, they should not have press passes.
There are days, man, and I would think this would bother you as a working daily journalist, right? Whose books are very good journalism, and you write columns now. You appear in a lot of different ways. The level we've had this sort of, I don't even know what the percentage is, but it keeps going up. Where the line between, I guess you'd say, earnest activity, whether it's in politics or journalism and whatever, and performance, it's receding. They're merging. They in fact, I think they now have merged. Where even listening to the interviews, watching these three quote unquote reporters or influencers, it all looks like a bit. It all looks like a game that has so much more to do with performance than really trying to do whatever the job is. You know what I'm saying? And we see this in politics all the time now.
I get it, and I'm not sure where the line ends. I mean, so sometimes I used to be, went on Tucker Carlson any number of times. I did a long-form interview with him when he was on Fox. I don't recognize him today. How much of the new Tucker is the real Tucker? Right. How much is just calculated for, I don't know. Candace Owens, she's off the wall in a lot of the things that she says, from Macron's wife being a man to whatever else. But is it performance, or is she really have it? There's a guy, I told you, the guy who's running in the 6th congressional district in Florida, Dan Bilzerian, has been on podcasts all the time. And he says, he's the one who says, I would sign up tomorrow and go boots on the ground and go effing kill Israelis. That would be a great day for me. He has 29 million followers. So he's making money. Is that really what he thinks? Maybe. Or is it just the way of the moment to be able to go ahead and get 29 million followers? I'm not sure. But in the end, I don't care if you really believe in it or if you're just doing it to cash in. I still find it reprehensible in case of the Mangione people and in case of him and in case of Candace and others. So I'll condemn it. You don't get any extra brownie points for me if you're sincere about it.
Did you, is there any chance that you guys inspired Bill Maher's latest monologue? Because it had to do basically, like you say, the merging sections of the left and the right when it comes to anti-Semitism. Did you write it?
Yeah, I should be so lucky to be a writer on that team. But no, I did send Maher a copy of the article that we wrote at the New Anti-Semitism and Skeptic, but for all I know, it's still sitting unopened in his inbox. So I'll give him credit for coming up with that originally, although I'd like to think that maybe he read it and it inspired him to do a rant on it that was pretty good.
Yeah, it was very well done, no question about that. And it's why, Maher talked about it. I mean, he Democrats get on him because he's, he considers himself a lefty for sure, but a liberal, right? An old-fashioned liberal, not so much a progressive. And he's saying, you can be mad at me all you want, but this is what I see. Somebody's got to say it. I'm going to lay it out there. And look, I don't always agree with him any more than I'm sure you always agree with him. But I do appreciate that in him, that he'll surprise you.
Yeah, no. And he does. And on the cultural issues, he's often very good. I do disagree with him on things. I mean, I disagree with him from pot, which I think, weed is not a great thing. And also when he did an interview recently with the governor of California, he was able to get Newsom there. I thought he gave him a lot of softballs, but Maher is not a hardball investigative journalist. No. So I can't necessarily hold him to that standard, but I was thinking as I was watching that interview, what about this? Well, ask him about that. I'm thinking to myself, what about that? Yeah. But there was none of that.
Yeah. Well, it's good to catch up. And there are about 5 other things we could get into, but we're unfortunately against the clock. We'll do it again next time. We'll keep reading and paying attention to you, and we appreciate, as always, the time. Hope you and your wife are doing well.
It's always great. It's always great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Gerald Posner, excellent stuff from him again. Maybe get some reaction via the text line later. We do have a lot to cover in the rest of the final 90 minutes of this program. Probably hold on to Dr. Dan's inbox for tomorrow, I think. But we do have some, I guess, toy department stuff to discuss. Is that correct?
Yes. The Western Conference Finals started last night, as heard on the Fan.
I assume Colorado won.
Well, we're going to get to that.
Oh.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. I'm going to give you some breaking news on that.
Interesting.
Not that there's any injuries or anything like that, but speaking of injuries, more in the NBA that we need to discuss as well.
Bumper to Bumper with Dan Barrero on the Fan.
From the 1-800-ASK-GARY Traffic Center.
This report is sponsored by Luggage World.